Most people think you need millions to start in property development, or maybe a few 100,000 at a minimum. And honestly, that's what I thought too when I started. So what if I told you the best way to get started in property development requires almost no capital, and it teaches you everything you need to know about the full development cycle, and it can return 10x or more. I am going to show you and break down specific examples of this strategy that we are live doing right now. My name is Mads, and over the last 20 years I've delivered over 150 mil of property developments, from penthouses in Belgravia to mansions in Mayfair, and right now I'm on site in Portugal redeveloping a £12 million beach house that was acquired from no one else than Cristiano Ronaldo. And here's the thing. If you're watching this right now, you probably know more about property development than I did when I started. My first deal 20 odd years ago was a studio apartment in North London that I bought at an auction in 2005. I had no background in development. I had to borrow the money from my dad. I had no idea what I was doing, but I had just enough understanding to see an opportunity and a way to add value and the confidence to act. I converted that to a one bed and I sold it on for about £80,000 profit. But that deal taught me something critical. The real money in property development isn't made during the build. It's made before you ever buy the site. And that is what today's video is about. I'm going to show you why planning uplift deals are the perfect entry point into property development, and how you can start with as little as a few £1,000s, a computer with one particular piece of software, and to learn the skills that separate development professionals from amateurs, and honestly create life-changing income without needing to have a massive capital upfront. Let's get into it. Alright, so here we go. We are now down in Surrey, and as I said, these are two deals that we are live on at the moment. I think it makes much more sense to show you some deals that we're doing right now rather than ones that have been done in the past. So what you can see here is a house with what we call a dogleg shaped garden. Now, critically, you can see in this upper image, the plot is oversized compared to all the neighboring plots. And it doesn't take a genius to understand that on this plot right here, outlined in red, there is probably development potential. It runs in the same row of houses along the side here. Similarly, you see up here in this front, they're running in that direction as well. You would think there's a natural entry point, especially with a house across the road here as well, for something to be built here on this space. If you look down to this lower section, you can see it better here. You can see houses running along this road here. You can see houses running along this road here. There's two access points for this house down here. Why not something here? So we found this property using Searchland Pro, and we came across it. We then cross-checked it against the planning regulations for the local area, the local council's planning directives. We also did some general highways checks and access checks, and we identified it as having the opportunity to develop, mainly because when you calculate the square footage values in the area, you look to see, well, what if we're going to build something here, what would be the square foot the price per square foot value of this new development? And you look at what's been sold, not what's on the market, but look at what's been sold in the area, what the kind of property is, and then you work out what the end value or the GDV of the site would be. And you then work backwards and you think, okay, fine, so what would the likely build cost be for this project? So then you calculate the build cost per square foot, and that has to be a very accurate number as well. And we can show you how to do that in another video. But then you work it backwards and you think, okay, then it leaves me what I can acquire the site with, but I have to build my profit in. So then you calculate around your profit, then needs to be delivered on the project, and then you get a general idea of what the site value could be. So we ended up approaching these landowners and we appraised the site, and we think the site is probably worth around 1.5 million as it stands right now. So what we did was we offered the owners slightly higher for the site. They had no intention of moving anytime soon, and we agreed that we would spend our own money and time on trying to get planning on this plot. So there's no risk to the landowner. They are sitting pretty, doing absolutely nothing, taking no risk. We are coming with the risk and spending time and money on seeing what can be done. But we secured the site via an option agreement. And an option agreement is a legal document that allows you the right to acquire that site for X value for X amount of time, which basically means you have a contractual arrangement to spend your time adding value to this site. So if you look here on the actual larger plan area, you can see that looking around the area, it's an oddly shaped plot. Now you can see we've divided the plot here into blue and red. So it's these two together. So it's very different from these plots here, which are more typical. Here you can see there's been a plot that's been subdivided in the past, most likely. Again, here on this other side of the road, very similar sized plots, all running very uniform. And you have to remember one thing that's very important always is access. And here you can see, here's this, but the one we have in red here is our proposed development area. This has got access points here at 2 levels. It mirrors a development over here, it mirrors a development over here, and it mirrors a development over here. Definitely potential. So the scheme that we came up with, you can see here, this is zooming in on this area that was red, where we've proposed to build a 2-story dwelling. It's 240 square meters, about 2,500 square foot. It's got a driveway coming in here off the south to the site. We've positioned it. The biggest constraint on this site was its proximity to the neighbor on this side. But if you go back to see, I mean, this is quite a common theme. You see the proximity here, 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 here. It is very tight. So there is a precedence for that. We've got a nice garden area at the back here. There's a terrace, there's a garage. It's a decent family home, 2,500 square foot. GDV of around 2.5 million for the finished house. Now, if you look here on the subdivision plot, you can see there's a bit more of a outline. This is the existing, what we call the donor house, and this is the new proposed development down here. I think what's important to understand is we found the site. It was not on the market. It was when we identified the opportunity and we came up with a plan to add value. We then approached the landowners. We wanted to take control of the site because if we're going to spend money developing the site, we want to have control over it for a certain amount of time, which is what we agreed with the landowners. And the land was, like I said, it was worth around 1.5 before we got involved. We offered a slightly higher value than that to the landowners to make it attractive to them, but mainly because we are going to increase the value of that land quite considerably with our planning permission. So that's how we create our margin and the margin for the landowner. It's very important that there's always benefit for everybody. You need to share the upside, which is what makes for a great teamwork. So the planning permission we went after was to build one new family home at the south point of the site. This area is all houses pretty much. There are a few flats around. We looked at a possibility of a 2 or 3 flat scheme, but it just wasn't worth it. The access points, the amount of road traffic would be an issue. You just want to have a family home with 1 or 2 cars entering. That's an easier route to getting planning permission for it. Once we get planning permission, the value of the site will increase by at least £1 million, which then you need to deduct the value of the build, etc. But the value of the site essentially will go up by £1 million. So there's a lot of equity being created, a lot of value being created, which will then be shared with the sellers. And obviously as well, there'll be some uplift for whoever comes in and buys this site so that they've got an attraction for buying it without as just the land and building the house themselves. We've spent the best part of a year now on this. It's taken longer than we would normally like to take because it's been quite complex. The area is something in a RASC site area, which means that there are additional considerations. It's like a conservation area. It has special characteristics, this area. It's in the Greenbelt in Surrey. So there are added complications for this one, but we've taken it slowly, but we're about a year in. I think when we exit the project, the profit itself for us as a developer will be in the region of £500,000 to £600,000 once all costs are included. And I think if you look at the expense that we've had on this, the final cost to us as the developer will be around £25,000 to £35,000 plus VAT, and we can't recoup the VAT, so probably around £45,000. Now, with a profit of £500,000 to £600,000, that is quite a multiple. I'm sure you'll agree. So we are now at the final stages of the planning process. We've had 3 revisions to our planning application. We think we're just about there, but let's see. I think one specific skill from this development is to work, is to really get into the nuances and the details of the local restrictions. We suffered with a lot of difficulty here from good old-fashioned NIMBYism, where a lot of the neighbours don't like any kind of new development, and you really have to work around that. You cannot bulldoze your way through. You have to listen to what's being said and tweak your application so that it adheres to those concerns. The more that you can get into the weeds of the detail around the problems that you're facing, the greater a chance you have of finding a way through. And this is really where your professional team has the biggest role ever. You know, for a project like this, we work with two main specialists. One will be an architect, and ideally an architect that also specializes in the type of development that you're looking to do. You can't choose any architect, you really need to choose the right one, especially an architect that has development background. I think that's an absolute key. They need to be a problem solver rather than an idealist. Secondly, planning consultants. Planning consultants are there to put your application together and help you navigate your way through the issues, but they are worth their weight in gold, especially when you get into something as nuanced and complicated as sites like this. I mean, I'm not talking about this as complicated like a massive scheme, but you still require a lot of local knowledge, and you need someone with experience on that front. Those are your two main expenses in a development like this. All right, moving on to example number 2. Here we go. We are now also in Surrey. This is a slightly larger scheme, but all the same principles nonetheless. Let me show you on this front here. Here you can see, this is probably not the best location plan in the world, but it's what I've got right handy. So here you can see, this is the road as it runs down. This is a residential area. Here you can see house, 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 all running along the roadside. And right here in the middle, highlighted in red, is our development site. Now you'll see that firstly, it's the only house in the street that is, or that has a dwelling right smack bang in the middle of it. Also, you can see that it's one of the largest. It actually is the largest plot on that street. And thirdly, you can see that the neighbouring house have done what's called a backland development. So you can see that they've cut the site here along there, and they've put a driveway down here, and they've built at the rear of the site. All of those three initial identifications smelt opportunity. So if I go down to here now, if we're looking onto the site in a bit more detail, here you go. So these are the houses that we looked at. This is the original house sitting here in the middle. You can see here, large garden to the fore, large garden to the rear, and a badly placed, quite small house in the middle of the site. So what was our proposal? We looked at it and we thought this is what the site could become. So instead of having one house where you can see the outline is here, we would build a new house at the rear, and the house, this plot is slowly banked to the north, which means that it actually has a beautiful eye of sight view coming from the top here. So it actually works incredibly well. Even without that, it would work well, but that makes it work particularly well. And then we also, to copying the neighbor, where you can see the driveway going up the side here, we have done the same. So we have provided a driveway up the right hand side here to this house at the rear. So it has a private driveway, it has a large garden still in this space here, but with a large, maybe about 200 to 225 square meter house sitting at the north side here. But then down to the south, we have designed two 4,000 square foot family homes. So you have a central driveway coming in here, plot 1, plot 2, loads of parking, massive gardens here at the back, completely detached, just too beautiful. And we designed these in the Georgian style. Super scheme. So again, we found this site using Searchland, just tracking down, looking at plot sizes, looking at recent planning applications, looking at desirability for an area, looking at price per square foot, looking about, how many units being transacted in this area, all the various searches that we do to make sure that it's a viable scheme. Then we approached the landowner and we shared with them our vision. They were a couple, a little elderly, who were thinking about the future. They had no intention of moving, but they thought, well, we've got this enormous site, we'd like to extract some value, we want to perhaps move to something more convenient for us, but in a few years. So they were agreeable to the offer that we made them, which was probably about 20% higher than the value of the site as it is right now untouched. So if they were to just put the house on the market as it is right now, it's about 20% less than what we're offering them. Again, we're taking all the risk in the form of obtaining planning permission. So we met them, we had a couple of chats about it, we then agreed to go ahead, we instructed the solicitors who put together an option agreement. The option agreement cost a couple £1,000. We had it signed up, and now we're in control of the site for the term of that option agreement. And that option agreement very clearly says that we are going out to get planning permission. When we get the planning permission, we have the right to execute the option, which means we can buy the whole site for the price that we've agreed. And then, of course, what our business model is that when we've got the planning permission, the site is now worth considerably more than what it was. And if I give you some numbers on this one, we have agreed to acquire the site for 1.2 million, and with the full planning permission in place, we feel the full GDV value of this site will be 5 million. Now, if you deduct the build costs, which are probably 2.5, there is still around 1.3 to 1.5 million pounds of profit for the developer in this site. And our entire risk to get there at the moment is sitting around 50k for our planning consultant. And so on that job, we have the architects again, we have the planning consultants, we have ecologists, we have tree survey, we have our highway surveys, and that's just the start of it. We are going to have about 3 or 4 surveys more, but altogether it's about a 50k cost all in all. Again, we are planning on taking this through the full development cycle. So, we've been working on this now for about 9 or 10 months. We are well progressed through the planning process. Once we get planning permission, we will then build it out ourselves or in partnership with another contractor. And then we will take it through until we sell the units at the end. The whole project, we think, will take about 2 to 2.5 years. However, if that's just our magic, we want to take it through and do the whole build. This could have been an example. This could have been sold right after the option agreement was signed. That was maybe 3 months. That has a lot of value. Or you could have gotten a pre-app response, and we had a very nice pre-app response from the council. So you could have sold it at that point. So, but we're taking it through the full development process, and we'll share the whole and document the whole thing here on the channel. But I'm just saying that you don't have to commit to that long if you don't want to. You can create value at different stages and exit when you want to, depending on your own requirements. And on this one, the biggest skill or the biggest requirement to make this a success was being able to deal with the landowner and understanding their particular concerns and making sure that we dealt with all their concerns and assured them that no matter what happens during the journey, their concerns at each point have already been dealt with. So if we get planning and we go to build it, how are we going to do it? How are we going to build? Are we going, what's the build process? What about them moving out? What about the sale process? All the sort of general questions that they might have. If we didn't got, let's say we got half the planning that we wanted, what would the process be then? How would we choose to look at how would we renegotiate the value? What would our agreement look like at that point? And if we didn't get planning, what would be the scenario then? Well, just nothing would happen. We would not go ahead and exercise to buy the site, and our loss would be the money that we'd spent on the planning application process. But there'd be no loss to the landowner because they are unaffected by any of that as per the option agreement. So it was walking them through that whole thing and really getting to understand and feel comfortable and on board with the process. You need to be a team. You need to be in unity about the strategy going forward. It just makes for such a better process from the start. So those are two real deals, real numbers, and soon to be real outcomes. And what I want to do now is reverse engineer exactly why these deals work on paper and possibly in real life. And so you can replicate the process without making the same mistakes that we've made in the past. But look, here's what I've learned over the last 20 years and 150 million projects. Planning Uplift isn't just a strategy. It's also the perfect first deal for any aspiring developer. It comes down to 4 core components. Let me walk you through them. Core component number 1, it has a low capital requirement. Look, you don't need to buy the land. You don't need to acquire the land before going and investigating the planning uplift potential or engaging planning consultants or engaging architects. You just need to agree to control of the site through an option agreement or a promotion agreement. They are similar. I'll talk about that in another video. But you can get control of the site for 1, 2, 3, 10 years, whatever you negotiate. And it doesn't cost you more than £2,000 to £3,000 in legal fees to put that option agreement together. Now, compare that to like a traditional refurb. You need to raise, 100 to 200k of capital, to acquire the site, pay stamp duty, pay the lawyers, carry out the refurbishment. You've got to hold it. There's a financing costs. From a risk comparison perspective, you're risking 200k in a typical model, versus risking 3k in this model. And I can assure you the multiple for your return on investment is considerably higher in a deal like this. Traditional property deals and development require huge amounts of capital up front. And planning uplift deals like this, they remove that barrier to entry. You can control the site without owning it. Remember that your value is in the knowledge and execution here, rather than just having the capital to buy it. That's a much smarter way of doing a development. In deals like this, you can really prove yourself and you can learn the absolute nuts and bolts of development, which is the single most important thing that separates amateurs from professionals. Look at, the 2 examples we just gave. £2,500 the option agreement cost us. That's it. That was the entire upfront cost. No deposit, no mortgage, no bridging loan, nothing like that. Then we start working with the architects and the planning consultants to see what magic we can create on this site. Of course, we've already done our own DD. We've checked everything from a high level perspective, all the stuff that we'll teach you if you want in our land capital program. But the key insight here is that the best developers don't use their own money. They use their knowledge to access other people's money. And Planning Uplift teaches you this from day one. All right, core component number 2. You need to learn everything that matters. Planning Uplift forces you to learn every critical skill in development. You have to understand, if you look at like a development cycle from here, it's just a patch of dirt, to here it's a fully formed site where you're selling off the units. There's a journey that you have to go through, and you can imagine the value increases as you run along at different points. There's value increase when you sign the option agreement. There's value increase when you get a positive pre-app from the council. There's a massive value increase when you get planning. There's value increase when you've built it, and there's value increase when you then asset manage it in the future. We can go on to that, something else. But there's so many opportunities to add value, but none of that happens unless you can do the nuts and bolts at the start, where you can find the site and you know what to do with it. Your first deal is not always about profit, remember. There's a massive educational point here, and it's so important that you learn how to do this. And you're playing with much lower stakes. There's much lower risk, and it's a much better learning environment. The skills that you will learn: site identification, how to spot opportunity that others miss. This is everything. Planning system, how to navigate the councils, the policies, the constraints, how to put a deal together. What is an option agreement? What is a promotion agreement? How does a JVs look in a scenario like this? And then your risk assessment, doing the due diligence on the site, checking the title, planning constraints, detailed analysis. 5th, value creation. What is it that actually increases the land value? So important. 6, professional team management, working and coordinating between the architects, the planners, the surveyors, the landowners, the neighbours, all the stakeholders involved in the project. Number 7, landowner negotiation. How to approach the landowner and share your vision for the site and agree terms so that you can take that site under your control. And then lastly, exit strategies. Sell with planning, sell with an option, develop it out, JV with a builder. Endless opportunities. If you're the one who secured the site and you're the one who's created the value, all the options sit with you. If you get on the development journey later on, those options have run out. These are the exact skills that you need to learn for any type of development. And learning them on a £3,000 option agreement is so much smarter than raising 300k and risking it all on that first deal. Every successful property developer understands planning inside and out. And this is your foundation for everything that comes after in the development game. That knowledge has been worth millions in later deals down the line. If you don't know how to do this, there's no chance that you've got hope in hell of appraising larger complex sites that you might see in your development career unless you know the foundations of it for how to create that initial value. If you can identify a site, secure it, and get planning permission, you can do almost any development deal. This is the skill set that separates the amateurs from the professionals. Right, back to the core components. The third is huge profit multiples. Planning permission can increase the land value 5 to 10x or more. That is the highest return on capital in any form of property development. You are taking something which has got relatively low value and you are turning it into something else by getting the legal approval that is planning permission. That multiple can be enormous. And, there are some deals where you obtain consent for hundreds of houses, and I can tell you that multiple is in 3 figures. It is pure value creation, and it has got nothing to do with market speculation. You're in control, you're adding the value. If you look at the numbers, right, agricultural land is probably worth on average about 10k per acre. Residential land with planning can be worth up to £500,000 per acre. There's massive opportunity here. And your input is generally only a few £1,000s for legal fees, plus the planning costs, which could be funded by your partner. I'd be happy to fund them. More on that later. And your return, if you're doing it with a JV partner, is 50% of the uplift. So for example, the example I just gave, that could be £245,000 of profit on a 3k investment. All right. So you look at the comparison between a refurbishment deal, you got 50%, let's say 50k capital, 15k profit, you get a 30% return. And a 30% return is good in a typical project development venture. But with planning uplift, you could be 3k capital down and 200k profit. That is a 6,600% return. Where else could you get multiples like this with this little risk? Planning permission is the highest leverage activity in property. You're creating value from knowledge, not capital. This is how you build serious wealth without needing serious money. One good planning deal can fund your next 10 projects. All right? I mean, if you look at the projects that I walked you through earlier, both of those together will equate nearly £2 million of profit. And we are 8 or 9 months in to both of them, right? It's not a sector to be ignored. I have made millions of pounds over the years from refurbs and flips, but the biggest multiples I've always achieved have come from planning. If you understand planning and you understand site finding, you understand where real value comes from. Look, the deals that I showed you earlier, that's exactly the kind of opportunity that Land Capital members are bringing to the table, and we are backing them. The best developers always build great functioning teams and partnerships. And access to expertise and capital is more valuable than just having it yourself. That is always a finite supply. By making partnerships and growing a team, you will scale much faster than going solo. So now that you understand how the planning uplift game works, let me show you a breakdown of how to do it. Here is the exact 5-step implementation blueprint. Step 1, identify opportunities with a developer's eye. Look for oversized gardens, backland sites, conversion opportunities, could be commercial to resi, settlement boundary sites, sites with precedent for development. And the way that you find them is that you learn the site identification process. You use tools like Searchland or Searchland Pro. The best way to do it is by start evaluating sites in your local area. Use your newfound development lens. Think, what could I create here? What are the possibilities of this site? Property development is actually a creative process. So many people ignore that, but it is. It's your vision backed by knowledge and understanding of what can be done. Look for sites that don't fit the surroundings. Research what has been approved nearby. Look at other deals that developers have done. You can go along and see something being built or something newly built. You can go onto the local council's planning website and look at the planning documents. Then you can see what it was before, as on the existing plans versus the proposed as what it has become. Study that. See what's possible. So much opportunity. Both the sites that I showed you this morning, both the sites that I showed you today, were literally in someone's backyard. People walk past it every day and never thought twice. But once you train your eye, these opportunities are everywhere. Start evaluating local areas with a development lens. Step 2, understand the planning system. You need to learn local plan policies, understand settlement boundaries, understand planning constraints, flooding, conservation area, RASC, greenbelt, brownbelt, etc. and understand various precedents in the area. The best way to learn is working with someone like Land Capital, example, for structured training, but you can also look at local planning applications, and find or get access to a professional network. Planning is not, it does seem like a dark art, but planning is not as complicated as you think or as people think. It is a system with rules, and you just need to learn the rules. Precedent is powerful. Seeing what someone's done before is a great gateway to seeing what is possible in the future. If you understand constraints, you will understand opportunity. If I was you, I would join a program like Land Capital, or I would study local planning applications of successful developments in the area to understand their process and what they've done, and then see how I can copy that with a site that I would identify myself. All right, number 3, let's secure your first site, okay? Get it secure with an option agreement. The process here, identify that opportunity, research the ownership. You can find that during land registry, or again, Searchland Pro will take you through that. 3, contact that landowner. My favorite is direct mail. A good old-fashioned letter is always best, but you can call them, you can pop round, you can knock on the door, whatever. Negotiate the optional promotion agreement. Get that legal agreement signed. That takes a few weeks, cost a couple of grand, then you're in control. Look, most landowners don't realize the potential of their own land, and you are offering them a risk-free opportunity. Option agreements protect both parties. They're a very clear agreement that shows what you are signing up to do, right? It's been done millions of times before. We have all the templates and the proven frameworks for that. If you look at an example that I gave, both the landowners of the 2 sites that I showed you today were smart professionals, but they had no idea how their land could be developed. We showed them the opportunity, we structured a fair deal, and everyone will win. Okay? So you got to start reaching out to landowners. Then number 4, progress yourself through the planning process with your first site. You've appraised the site, you understand the site viability, you've gotten a professional team in place, architect, planning consultants, surveyors. Submit the planning application and manage that process through to approval. If you do it with us and Land Capital, we will help you manage and fund that entire process as we go through it together. Remember, this is where the value is created during this process. The professional team, the quality and the talent of the professional team here is everything. Planning takes time. Be patient. It can take between 6 and 9 months, sometimes longer depending on the complexities. You need to understand that timing. Right, step 5. So, step 1, we've been through we found the site, we tied it up with an option agreement, we've been through planning, we've successfully got planning. So now we're going to exit or develop ourselves. That means either we will sell it with planning permission to another developer, or we will build it out ourselves. So your exit options generally are, you can sell the land to another developer. So let's just say you got it tied up on option, you got planning, value skyrocketed, you can sell it on to somebody else. You can sell it on to someone who can build the home themselves, you can build it onto another developer, you can sell it onto a house builder. It all depends on the type of scheme. Secondly, you could JV with the builder. So you could, for example, go and approach a construction company like mine and say, look, I've got this site, these are the numbers, you build it, you fund the build cost, and then at the end we'll sell the units together and we'll split the profit. You have to get into bed with the builder to do that, but you do share you don't have to come up with all the money for the build. There's a lot of risk in this scheme because you don't know the builder who you're getting involved in. So it's not my favorite, but it is a possibility. Third, you can develop it out yourself. And again, we will teach that to you in Land Capital, how to do that. But you will need more capital and more experience. But again, we will provide that to you in Land Capital if you want to go down this route. But you must always have multiple exit strategies in mind from day one. You know, when you're going through it, you have to look at the end value and see what's the smartest way to do this. On the first example I showed you today, in the one in Surrey, the first one in Surrey, we are going down a planning route called self-build custom house. And that self-build custom house route means that the site needs to be sold to somebody who wants to build the house themselves. Not themselves personally, but it's a council requirement, but it also means it's typically an easier route through to planning. And that means that you can't build it yourself as a developer and sell it. But that's fine, because if you imagine someone who's going to buy a £2.5 million house, right? They're going to have to pay a lot of stamp duty to buy that house. But if they could buy the site for $1 million, their stamp duty would be considerably less. They then fund the build, which is another $1 million. And then they've spent $2 million plus stamp to acquire the site. So they will have made some profit on the build as well. And there's a lot of people out there who want to build their own home. They just don't have the understanding or the knowledge to find the site and obtain planning permission to create that value. That value is yours. Section 4. These are the mindset shifts you need to understand. And before we wrap this up, I want you to understand these 4 critical mindset shifts that separate successful developers from everybody else. The first is that you don't need loads of capital to start. You just need the knowledge, the know-how, the skill set. Then you'll be able to do deals like this. The best developers are knowledge workers, not just capital providers. The value is in identifying and executing the opportunities, right? The capital will always follow good deals, not the other way around. You just need to bring that good deal, right? And it's how you can prove yourself without risking a ton of money. Every deal that I've done started with knowledge, right? Not the capital. The shift number 2, planning permission is the highest leverage activity out there. It is more valuable than refurbs, extensions, change of use, or any cosmetic improvement. You are creating value from nothing, pure, unadulterated value creation. And understanding planning gives you an unfair advantage against everybody else. It is what differentiates between amateurs and professionals. It is where the real money is made in development. The third mindset shift is that your first deal doesn't actually have to be so much about profit. It's also about education. Don't start with a massively complex high capital deal. Start with something that teaches you the fundamentals. Planning Uplift teaches you all the fundamentals. It gives you the full educational stack, experience stack with minimal risk. And the skills that you learn will apply to every future deal. And the fourth thing is that you don't have to do it alone. You need to build a team and partnerships. If you get access to expertise and capital, it is more valuable than just doing it yourself. And that's why something like the Land Capital model, you source and we'll execute and fund. It's a great partnership. You don't have to do it with us, but it is something that I would seriously consider if I were you, especially if you're just starting out. And this is how you'll scale much faster than just going solo. Look guys, Planning Uplift is not a get-rich-quick scheme. There is no get-rich-quick scheme in property. Property is tough. You've got to be smart. You've got to be educated. You've got to know what you're doing, okay? It requires work, learning, and patience. But it is the smartest way to start in property development. I've done over 150 mil in deals over the last 20 years, and site finding and planning knowledge underpins all of it. All of it. If I were to start today from scratch, this is exactly what I would do. But the thing is, the honest truth here is that most people just won't take any action, but those who do take action, they will leapfrog everyone else. Your first deal does not have to be perfect, but it has to be educational. And planning Uplift deals gives you that education, it gives you profit, and it gives you the foundation for everything that you need next. You can start with almost no capital. You just need to bloody start. Look, we've built Land Capital to give you everything I wish I'd had when I started. It's not about whether you can do this or not. It's actually about whether you'll take the action to do it. If you are serious about getting started in property development, then Land Capital will give you the education, the support, and the capital backing. This is not just education, it is a full-blown partnership model. We will teach you everything you need to know about finding and appraising the deals. You then find and put the deal together, and we will bring the expertise and funding. 50-50 profit share, fully aligned incentives. There is a link in the description to learn more or to book a call with the team who will answer all your questions. Look, we're not just teaching this. We are literally doing this alongside you. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.